So I bought a motorcycle, and given all of the options out there, it wasn't an easy process. But it was a rather exciting one filled with lots of twists and turns. And when I thought I knew what I wanted, my mind just kept on changing. I test rode 7 different bikes over 13 test rides across 53 days to finally make up my mind. Considering I've been out of motorcycling for a while, I did not really have a use case as such, so I decided to try out pretty much everything that was out there. From street nakeds to adventure bikes to dual sports, I tried them all to see what appealed to my heartstrings. And that's exactly what this video is all about. I will take you through every single one of those test rides and give you my 2 cents. But before we get to that, in case you're wondering about the elephant in the room, which is where have I been for the last 6 to 7 years? Well, life happened. I was busy, but sometime last year I started to get the itch to get back into motorcycling once again. And this year in May, I decided to dive right in. And this video is exactly about each one of those test rides. I'm going to take you along, give you my 2 cents, and hopefully you'll find it to be both informative and perhaps even a bit entertaining. Test ride number 1 was the Duke 390. Now, of course, my channel blew up predominantly from the ride video that I did of the KTM Duke 390 all the way back in 2017, the Gen 2 that I'm talking about. Now, when I test rode the Gen 3 for the first time, it was an electronic orange. The moment I sat in it, I felt the bike was extremely small and compact. In fact, you don't feel like you're sitting on the bike, you feel like you're sitting in the bike. I test rode this bike for about 10 minutes through very narrow lanes, and instantly I felt, this is a little too much. 47 bhp, 39 newton meters of torque, and the way it delivers that power in that angry way, I was not sure if I really needed it, especially for city riding, which is what I was going to use it mostly for. But I don't make decisions based on first impressions only, so eventually I would ride the Duke 390 2 more times, but more on that later. From there, I went to test ride the XPulse 210, and I was instantly at home and very, very pleased and impressed by what Hero had put together. Now, here was a bike that was very well built, and the refinement issues were pretty much non-existent. As soon as you sit in the XPulse 210, you're sitting tall, you feel amazing, and the motorcycle puts a smile on your face in terms of how easy and fun it is to ride. Now, even though it is a dual sport and it is meant for off-roading and city riding, I think there are a lot of off-roads to be found in any city in India, especially Bangalore, with all of the crater-sized potholes that we come across on a regular basis. It takes all of them in its stride. In fact, it eats them for breakfast, and it is literally like a magic carpet that glides through anything that you throw its way. In fact, I was so impressed by the XPulse 210 that I thought about booking it on the spot. But I don't make such decisions on an impulse, no pun intended, and I decided to go out there and see everything that was on offer. My first stop in seeing what was out there was the Triumph Twins, the Scrambler 400X and the Speed 400. But before I talk about the bikes itself, I have to mention that my experience at Triumph was simply top-notch. The staff were courteous, professional, informed, and they also followed up without being pushy. So brownie points for that. As far as the Scrambler 400X is concerned, in my opinion, it is quite simply the best 400cc Scrambler in the country today. It is built like a tank. The fit and finish are absolutely top-notch, and you feel great when you're riding the bike. Now, of course, the fact that I did not go for this motorcycle has more to do with me than the bike itself. You see, the Scrambler 400X is a little too heavy and a little too tall, and both of those factors combined can make it a little bit of a daunting experience, but I think that I would have gotten used to it in about a month's time. But there were other reasons as well. Some of them were aesthetic. Now, on a motorcycle like this, what I believe is needed is the traditional suspension setup at the back, but they've gone with a monoshock that makes the rear stick out like a street naked bike towards the end. And finally, it doesn't have any electronics or riding modes. It's just good old motorcycling fun. And for me, those 3 reasons combined were reason enough to drop the motorcycle from my consideration list. The Speed 400, on the other hand, is a very simple motorcycle. It's built beautifully, the same fit and finish quality levels, all of that is a definite win. But I think it would be a great choice for someone who's moving from a commuter motorcycle or is new in motorcycling and would want to ride a 400cc bike. To me personally, I felt I wanted a little more of the motorcycle than what the Speed 400 was willing to offer. Ride 5 was the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450. Now, when I'd seen spy shots of this bike all blacked out in 2022, I was actually very intrigued, but then I promptly forgot about it until it started popping up on my Instagram feed when I was looking to buy a motorcycle. Now, this was not your quintessential Royal Enfield, it was a quantum leap up. Add to the fact that I quite liked its looks and its slight resemblance to an Indian FTR, I was all hooked. I booked a test ride, and even though the motorcycle that I got was not in great condition, the experience absolutely blew me away. The Sherpa 450 engine borrowed from the Himalayan was an absolute delight, and there is plenty of torque available in the second and the third gear that will put a smile on your face every time you rev the throttle. Now, even though the bike is a bit heavy, almost comparable to the Scrambler 400X, it is a low-slung motorcycle with a really fat 160 section rear tire, which makes it feel very planted, and I was hooked. In addition to that, I felt that the motorcycle looked really good on me. Yes, vanity is a thing in purchasing motorcycles, and the important distinction being the Super Meteor 650, for example, is also a great looking motorcycle. But would it look great on my lean and lanky frame? Probably not. But the Guerrilla 450, chef's kiss. Now, I know looks is subjective and this is just my opinion, but it's also my video. The Guerrilla 450 all of a sudden was a top contender on the list. However, I had unfinished business with the KTMs and the Husqvarnas. Ride number 6, the Husqvarna Svartpilen 401. When I test drove the KTM Duke 390, the electronic orange, for the very first time, there was a Svartpilen 401 parked away somewhere in the corner without the mirrors, and it actually looked quite interesting. So I decided to go ahead and take it out for a test ride immediately after riding the Guerrilla 450, and I was actually quite impressed. I always felt that the design of the Duke 390 was a bit too extreme, the colors were a little too loud, and the Svartpilen 401 seemed like a good, mature and subtle option to consider. Moreover, the fact that it shared the same engine with its KTM cousin made sure that you had plenty of power on tap and you could get plenty of excitable city riding in. However, there was something about the design that didn't quite click for me. The earlier generations I actually quite liked, but here the headlight was a little too big, the rear section was a little too lean, and somehow the whole picture did not come together for me. Combine this with the fact that it had missing riding modes and it came with spoke tires at that point of time, which meant that if you had a puncture, you were pretty much left to your own devices. It did not seem like a very appealing option, but I still kept it on my list for now. Ride 7 and 8. Now, all of a sudden, I was getting very comfortable with the 400cc motorbikes, and all of a sudden I thought, hey, you know what, hang on, I might actually enjoy this. Now, the KTM Duke 390 was emerging as a very strong contender. It had recently received a price cut, and it was cheaper by 20,000 rupees, and it also now came with cruise control. So I decided to go ahead and give it another try, and this time I went to a different showroom. I got the Atlantic Blue, and I took it around for a slightly longer test ride, and I was quite impressed. There is something over here that I'm starting to like. I wasn't fully convinced, but the second test ride all of a sudden exposed me to a completely different aspect of the motorcycle, and all of the electronic goodies that KTM had baked into it were definitely a plus. My heart though was still beating for the Guerrilla 450, whereas my mind was convinced that the KTM Duke 390 is an extremely good value proposition. Just to be sure and arrive at a final top 3, I test rode the Svartpilen 401 immediately after riding the Duke 390 and promptly ruled it out. Ride number 9, the Guerrilla 450 once again. Immediately after finishing my test rides of the Duke 390 and the Svartpilen 401, I headed over to a different Royal Enfield showroom and took the Guerrilla 450 out for a test ride once again. I was hoping to receive a motorbike in a much better condition than the last time around. And I did, but only sort of. There was again an issue with the clutch, and they came up with some kind of a stopgap arrangement, at least to make the test ride happen. And once again, I was absolutely blown away by the Guerrilla 450, and that torque in the second and third gear is something that you have to experience for yourself. The player black unit looked absolutely smashing, and my heart was once again swayed towards the Guerrilla 450. The battle between the heart and the mind would not come to an end just yet. But the good news was we finally had the top three. The heart was all for the Guerrilla 450. The mind was convinced about the Duke 390, and the safe bet seemed to be the XPulse 210. So the assignment was very clear. I had to test ride each of these three motorcycles once again to finally make up my mind. I decided to start off with the XPulse 210. You remember how impressed I was the first time around. I knew if I was equally impressed the second time, I would book the motorcycle right there and not even look at the other two options. However, all of those weekends spent riding those 400cc motorcycles made the XPulse 210 feel quite underpowered this time around. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still an incredibly fun motorcycle to ride, especially on bumpy roads. However, if there was just going to be one slot in my garage, for right now, that would not belong to the XPulse 210. Maybe someday, but for right now, we had our top two. It was going to be a shootout between the Guerrilla 450 and the Duke 390. Test ride number 11, the Guerrilla 450 Part 3. I went to yet another showroom this time and got the same player black unit, and this time around I had a friend for company as well because I wanted to get somebody else's opinion too. Now, of course, when I blipped that throttle, the torque in the second gear and the third gear brought an instant smile to my face once again. But this time around, something else emerged. I started wondering if this is a motorcycle that was a one-trick pony to a certain extent, or if it would keep me on my toes and keep me challenged and energized for months and perhaps even years to come. And that was a question that I had to find the answer to very, very soon. But overall, my heart was still set on how incredibly rugged and beautiful the Guerrilla 450 looked, at least to me. Now there was only one thing to do. Test ride the Duke 390 one final time to make up my mind once and for all. And just as I landed up at the showroom, there was the Adventure 390, lo and behold. And something in me said that I have to go ahead and take it out for a spin. And I sure did. And if you're thinking the rest is history, you're wrong. The Adventure 390 is a great bike. It's purpose-built, it feels incredible to ride, and it definitely has a very compelling use case. But for right now, in terms of what I was looking for, the Adventure 390 was simply not for me. As soon as I came back to the showroom, got off the Adventure 390 and got on to the Duke 390, I felt at home. When I blipped that throttle, it just instantly brought a smile to my face. And this one was again an electronic orange. I had a ball of a time, came back, thanked the salesperson and went back home. I had a big decision to make. The Guerrilla 450 versus the Duke 390. Given all of the intense thinking that I was going through, I decided to give myself a bit of a break and just get away from the topic, the decision at hand, for a few days. And during that time, the differences between the Guerrilla 450 and the Duke 390 became rather clear to me, and there emerged that moment of clarity. The Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 is an incredible motorcycle, at least according to me. It is not your typical Royal Enfield. In fact, it is part of that new age mold with that classic styling that has a certain spunk about it. It is raw, it is rugged, it is exciting, and it definitely occupies a very important place in the stable of Royal Enfield's motorcycles. The Duke 390, on the other hand, is not a motorcycle. It is a purpose-built machine with absolutely no pretense. It is demanding, it is exacting, and it is built to be extremely precise. It does not pay homage to classic motorcycling. Its design is perhaps from a future that hasn't fully arrived, and its performance is not something that you can fully extract on city roads. It does not accommodate you, it does not tolerate your mistakes, and it does not mollycoddle you in any way. But if you ride it the way it is supposed to be ridden, it can enthrall you, it can entice you, and perhaps even elevate the rider that you are. It took me 3 test rides on the KTM Duke 390 to realize without a shadow of a doubt that this was the motorcycle for me. The heart was now all in and the mind was even more validated than before. After riding 7 different bikes across 13 test rides over 53 days filled with anticipation, the Duke 390 was finally coming home. If you liked the video, then go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave your comments in the comment section below. I will be back very soon. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and as always, ride safe.